Welcome to another compelling episode of The Law. This is your legal light. It is your health law. I'm Samson Ladianyaneni, and today we bring you an important and deeply human conversation emerging from the Nsawam Prison, where a group of dedicated lawyers from the Greater Accra Bar spent time hearing the stories of inmates, many of whom never had legal representation at trial. The visit revealed sobering truths, decades-long sentences without appeal, and a justice system that, in practice, fails to meet its constitutional obligation to defend the indigent, the poor. But it also sparked hope, possibilities of bail, follow-up legal action, and renewed advocacy. Joining me this afternoon, we have attorneys who were not only present during that visit, but who each bring a unique perspective to the conversation on justice, representation, and reform. We'll be right back.
Kwame sits silently on a plastic bench inside the Nsawam prison. He was arrested in 2021 for allegedly stabbing and killing someone during a street altercation. He says he was never given legal representation in court and remained in police custody for nearly 2 years without trial. Kwame says he feels abandoned and hurt by a system meant to protect the innocent until proven guilty. His lack of legal support is one of many that the Legal Aid Commission says stems from severe understaffing.
I'm a lawyer. I pay my lawyer for my first time, but he's not attending to me since 2021. As for this year, I came here July 2024, where I came this year, but I was in police station since December 2021.
But all is not lost. Kwame has been handed a lifeline. The Greater Accra chapter of the Ghana Bar Association stepped in, offering free legal counsel to inmates and to other Ghanaians in parts of the country who cannot afford private lawyers. Rita Kukunti Ali is a member of the Ghana Bar Association and the Ghana Legal Aid.
I am at the Legal Aid Commission, but I tell you what, we are understaffed at the Commission. We are overwhelmed with cases, and so even though the Commission has been set up by the state to deal with this kind of people who do not have money on their own to engage private lawyers, we are not many. The lawyers at the Commission are not many to deal with all these cases. Majority of the inmates here are on remand, which means that their cases have not yet been tried. And for some of them, the reason why their cases have not been tried is because they do not have lawyers. Because if you have a lawyer, your lawyer is going to push and, get your case heard in good time. But for some of them, because they don't have lawyers, they are almost like forgotten. They are here, they can be here for years, and their case will not be heard. So this is very, very, very important. It's very necessary. It's all about justice.
Meanwhile, the Eastern Regional Director of Prisons is also making a fresh appeal to the government for an urgent review of the daily feeding allowance for inmates currently pegged at a cedi and 80 pesos.
Sure, it is a challenge feeding because they are being fed on 1 cedi 80 pesos a day. And then this has persisted over a decade ago. And then we know that, what is obtained currently in the market. So the feeding rates of 1 cedi 80 pesos to provide 3 square meals, not only that, but nutritious meals for the inmates is definitely a challenge.
Until these concerns are addressed, officials warn that the prison system will continue to be overwhelmed and many inmates will continue to suffer. For Joy News, Stephen Mensah.
Right, you're welcome back. This is The Law. It's your legal light. It is your health law. And from my extreme left is Frank Viney Donko, who is with Savers Law and Consultancy. Frank, thank you very much for making time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
By Frank is Pokua Apiakusi. She is with AEK Kujo and Associates. Pokua, thanks for making time to be here.
Thank you.
And by Pokua is Rita Kunkuti Ali that you saw a while ago. She's a public defender working with the Legal Aid Commission of Ghana, a member of the Ghana Bar Association. Everyone here is a member of the Ghana Bar Association and their Greater Accra branch. So the Law Week for the Greater Accra Bar is what took all of us to the Nsawam prisons on Thursday. Rita, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And just by me, next to me is Mrs. Femi Asante. Femi Asante is CEO of Groups Sebastian. She is a lawyer with Templars and operates and operates the institution known as the Fair Justice Initiative. They are very familiar with the prisons. They've been going frequenting there and seeking to see how they can, as it were, help with integration efforts. Femi, thanks for making time to join us.
Thank you for having me.
I know you can be very busy, so we are happy that you made time to join us. As I said earlier, Rita played a central role in this initiative, leveraging on her experience with the Legal Aid Commission, the constitutionally mandated body tasked with defending the rights of the indigent persons. I'm talking about poor people. And she joins us to examine the systemic shortfalls, what ought to be the interventions of the Ghana Bar Association and others, and the reality of doing public interest law under such constraints. And Rita, first of all, what were your impressions? This is a place you are very familiar with, but going there together with your friends, 40 others, yeah.
Good afternoon to our viewers and listeners again. It's always fulfilling, going back to the prisons. Like you said, I'm always almost there because I have clients.
We saw one man running to you.
Yes.
Yeah, calling out your name.
Yes, that was my client. Yes, so he was very excited.
Right.
And these are the things that brings joy to us. So it's always fulfilling, like I said, going back there, listening to them, and then seeing how we can help them. The only new thing this time was that we were at the hospital.
Right.
Yes. And that would be my first time going to the hospital. We had to go there because they had brought us a list, and they said some of the patients at the hospital were bedridden. Yes. Yeah. So, and they still wanted to talk to us. So we had to go there. And for me, that was...
I spoke to this man who was, I understand, as it is, he's getting to suffer a stroke.
Exactly.
Again, I also spoke to several others, and the famous Atuasian.
Yeah.
Who was in wheels.
In the wheelchair. Yeah. I saw Atuasian.
In a wheelchair.
Yes, in a wheelchair. And then all the others who were bedridden, the man who is almost like paralyzed, he's been there for about 24 years. And so it was a bit depressing for me, going back, in the...
Depressing because of the state of the so-called hospital? Is that the point?
Yes, and the conditions that, you would think that they are human beings have been kept in. I tell you what, there's a human rights component to the delivery of justice, criminal justice. So when you see human beings, being kept under such conditions, we're all human, that feeling comes to bear. So, yes, it was. For me, I'm always happy going back to the prisons, but I come out depressed and worried.
Each time?
Yes, every time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Frank, having sat face-to-face with the inmates during your assessment process, you and Pukua, you bring to us, like he also, very raw, first-hand insight into what legal injustice looks like in the prison system. Give us an idea of what you felt interacting with the prisoners.
Thank you, Samson.
Including what you make of the condemned cells.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to my cherished viewers. I'm visiting Nsawam Prison for the first time. For me, was a dream come true. I've always had going into law. The intention is to help people who the law has not been treated them fairly. when I got there, I mean, listening to the stories of these inmates, I was saddened because some of them, especially those on remand, had been there for over 3 to 5 years and they've not been attended to. And if you hear their stories, these are stories that probably doesn't need a custodian sentence or something like that. But right. I mean, they've been remanded. So I think going forward, the law, there should be a law that should help some of these inmates to, to go through trial as quickly as possible. So
right. That's a major plank of the advocacy that you and I are involved in as the Prisons Committee of the Greater Accra Bar. And thanks to Isabel Boateng and her executive for such, an important and groundbreaking, initiative. Yes, Pukwa, briefly, what was your experience? When we walked out of the place, I saw some of the ladies especially, it was written all over their faces, like so depressed. And you are lawyers, you do the hard things, right? So why?
Okay. Good afternoon to you and your viewers too. Yes, it was a sad moment for some of us, as Senior has said and Frank has also said. It was also my first time in prison, and I've dreamt of visiting, verifying some of the things we hear or see on social media, and listening to the inmates. Especially, I got the opportunity to interact with remandees. About 8 of them I had a conversation with. None of them had their pleas taken. And some have been on remand for as long as 7 years. And these are mistakes that ordinary people make, and it has landed them in trouble. But it doesn't mean that they should be cast away. Being in between those walls is already depressing, and not giving the opportunity. So you are not making
an excuse for them whether or not they are guilty.
Yes.
But you're simply saying that there is procedure that has to be followed. In fact, a constitutionally mandated process that has to be followed.
Yes.
That has not been followed yet. No. And yet they are being treated as though they are convicts.
Yes.
And even if they are convicts, they have rights.
Of course. And that is all we are advocating for, that they should be given that fair trial the law prescribes, be given the opportunity to be heard, and given a defense so that if they are properly so-called convicted, they serve their term. And being on remand, they are not given the same opportunities those who have been convicted are given. They are unable to learn a trade, nothing. And so it's something I believe the country, it's a conversation the country should keep on having.
We'll get into the details shortly. I just wanted to, get your brief ideas about what you experience yourself. And Femi here she leads a groundbreaking initiative that bridges the gap between prison and community, helping ex-inmates reintegrate with dignity. So she's here to help us to speak about how justice failures at trial haunt inmates long after conviction, and how society can open its arms rather than turn its back. This very last part of the sentence, the phrase I used, when you appeared and spoke to all of us at the opening of the conference, that's where I picked it from, where you spoke about the fact that actually being released is the beginning of their sort of incarceration, rather. What?
It's when inmates are released, they begin a second sentence. The second sentence being the stigmatization, the being alienated, ostracized by your families, communities. They don't even know how to re-assimilate into society. So that's another sentence that the justice system does not cater for. Right? So it's important that before they are released, we are intentional about their psychological preparedness to assimilate back into society, for them also to have the tools and the skills necessary, because they've been institutionalized sometimes for years, 10, 15, 20 years, and they don't know how to function in society. I remember one of the women who was released that we received, and upon coming back to it, every 2 steps that she took, she stood because she was not used to.
And what we're
walking
watching
by
right
herself.
now is you and your team at
Yes,
the female
prison, welcoming an inmate who had been in sentenced to 15 years.
Right.
So getting the family back, her children.
And then after that, you went inside, met with them, and
yes,
I saw how you were able to sort of give them hope. Yes. You saw them jubilating. They were so happy.
Yes. I mean, I've done this for 14 years, so they're very used to us celebrating the days when they are usually forgotten, which is Mother's Day is usually very difficult for them, Christmas, all the holidays where they're not able to have access to their families. So it's important that we humanize the people who are behind bars, because that's the only way that people can shift the narrative around concerning incarceration.
You've done wrong, so you're punished. You have to be locked in there. When you are locked in there, we should actually forget about you.
Yes, but everybody is more than their greatest mistake. Every human being is more than their greatest mistake, and it's important that the media, everybody shifts that conversation and that narrative so that we can humanize them, and by so doing, people will shift how they receive them back into society.
All right. So, Rita, as you just heard from Frank, Prokua, and you were actually coordinating the process and how all of us, had to do the assessment. It was very obvious that many of the inmates interviewed had no legal representation during trial.
That's true.
What does this say to you about the operational capacity of your very important commission, and how often do you think lack of representation from accused or suspect to accused lead to wrongful convictions?
It does. A lot of times. I've sat in court and heard accused persons trying to do their own case, trying to do their own cross-examination, and sometimes I cringe because the questions they ask, these are people who don't know procedure, not only substantive law, but they also don't know procedure. For example, an accused person will not know that if there's an alleged confession statement, that confession statement will have to be put to a test, by way of a mini trial, so that if the court determines that he didn't give that statement, he or she didn't give that statement voluntarily, it will not be admitted in evidence. No accused person will know that.
And you're saying this because some of them actually are lured into, they are made promises, and they are asked to say things that they actually did not do, because they are being told by investigators that if you do this, you gain your freedom.
A lot of times, there's always some form of influence or pressure from the police. That is my experience. There's always some form. I have one that I'm dealing with now. Either they are torturing you or they are luring you, like you rightly said, something for you to admit or confess to committing the offense. And so legal representation is very crucial. It's very important. Like I said, I've sat in court, even indictable offenses, see accused persons trying to do their own case. And I wonder, and that's how come these days I think we are getting a lot of referrals. The Public Defenders Division is getting a lot of referrals from the courts, because even for the courts, it's really difficult to do the cases without lawyers.
But the Constitution in Article 19 says that you're entitled to do your own case. If you have to pick a lawyer, that's also your choice. So if they're doing their own case, what's wrong with it?
Like I said, that's a constitutional requirement or provision, but it's difficult for an accused person who does not know the law, substantive law and procedure, and it can lead to their wrongful conviction.
Because as you said, if they had given a confession statement, a lawyer will be able to lead them in a process for what is known as the voir dire, the mini trial, to determine whether or not they voluntarily gave it,
the statement,
and urge on a judge on the principle of the poison fruit, that the judge shouldn't accept it, and they may, you know, expunge that kind of evidence, which would have incriminated the accused person. In fact, also our law allows that if there is evidence that is exculpating, it should be made available to the accused.
Exactly.
But they may not know, and this will not be made available to them.
And the accused person may not also know that even though every evidence, relevant evidence is admissible, there are exceptions. So that if prosecution is bringing something that they should not bring, it shouldn't be allowed in. The accused person will not know this. Even more recently, talking about the coming into force of the plea bargaining, I've done a lot of plea bargaining negotiations, and it's not that easy on the face of it. I don't see an accused person succeeding because it's always offer and counter offers back and forth with the AG's office. So it's very important for an accused person, right from arrest to even sentencing, you know, to have legal representation. Because at sentencing, where an accused person is convicted, you may want to do what is called mitigation.
That's right.
You know, and an accused person may not know what to say to get a reduced sentence.
Right. Let me bring Femi in here. So Femi, they find themselves in these circumstances, and at the same time, as we interact with them, we interact with people who have said 40 years, you know, people who have been convicted of robbery or robberies. I met these two guys who had been sentenced to a total of 132 years each. Actually, one had 140 plus, but an appeal reduced the 140, you know, years to 132. And you're talking to them, and they are telling you that they are looking forward to be released. But even when they are released, they have another fear, the fear of rejection by society. Why should that be something they should be contemplating in the first place?
It's the fear is real, and I don't think we can ignore how, as a society, we receive formerly incarcerated persons. So even though they're incarcerated at the moment, their bigger worry is, what am I going to do when I'm released? Their families have rejected them. Their communities, they don't have any way of sustaining themselves. We find that a lot of the people that come out of the prisons, we have to help them either set up a small business that they can handle or employ them in different places. But there's a lot of discrimination.
Tell us some of these, practically the ones that the Fair Justice Initiative that you lead have encountered in seeking to integrate, you know, ex-convicts.
Some of the issues that we've encountered is a fear. People are afraid that, what have you learned since you were in prison? Have you become worse off than you went? Or also them not even knowing how to deal with who the inmate has become, you know. They are psychologically been so stretched. They are kicking against hope. They're trying to find their way. They're coming back to find that their classmates and people that they left behind have moved on. So that in itself is traumatic for them.
So fear not on the part of the convict who has been released, but we who are out here receiving them, we have fears.
Yes, yes. People usually...
Is that justified?
Absolutely. I think it's justified because we have this notion that when people are incarcerated, then they're all bad people. But
they become hardened.
They become very hardened, right? But if you don't give people hope, or you don't treat them with dignity and respect, you can't expect that they're going to change, you know? And we have to, if we say we believe in second chances, we must actually act it, you know, by how we receive them. We have to, I believe that policy changes around protecting formerly incarcerated persons against discrimination in terms for education, for housing, for jobs, and also giving them sort of a lifeline for them to become assets as opposed to being ostracized and leaving them absolutely no option and sometimes to go back to what even sent them into the prison in the first place, you know. So it starts from when they're incarcerated, giving them job skills training, psychological help, assistance, and actually dealing with that to be able to help them to be assimilated back into society.
Right. And Pokua, so in your interactions with them, was it manifest that the lack of representation, as in having lawyers from the start of the process, Article 14 says if you're arrested, you are restricted, you are detained, you are supposed to be told in a language that you understand of the reason for your restriction, detention, or arrest, and it doesn't end there. Your right to a lawyer of your choice. Did it become manifest to you that that absence of lawyer in the process may have resulted in some of them being there?
Absolutely. The absence of a lawyer actually resulted in they being on remand for as long as they have been. Because if any of them was represented, they would have been taken to court at least for their pleas to be taken. The process would have actually started for them and they would have known their faith. But these are people who had never, some have been to court, the court didn't sit, they were just thrown back in the jail. They have never seen, they've never been asked, are you guilty or not guilty? Being read the facts of the reason why they are actually there. So if they were represented, they would have actually been able to go through the process as they are supposed to go through.
Frank, is it this bad that someone's plea has not been taken? That's to start with. And yet they find themselves in remand in prison custody. Because taking your plea is the first thing. Once you're arrested and presented before a court, that are you guilty or not? You say you are guilty or you are not guilty, and then the process starts before you apply for bail and all of that.
Something is that bad. From the stories I heard when I went there, some of them were telling us that when they get to the court, as Pukua said, they don't even say a word, nothing. And then all they hear, they read the facts to the prosecutor will read the facts to the judge, and then the case will be adjourned. And one thing I realized is that most of them were also indicated to us that before they get to the court premises, they will be told to enter guilty with explanation. And I'm marveled. I mean, the police, how can you influence such situations like criminal situations? I mean, so these are the things that makes a person require a lawyer. So legal representation is very, very important because it will enable you to, it gives the accused person some areas in respect of the law so that they'll be able to know their right. But if there is no legal representation and on their way to the court, they will be told, accept plea of guilty with explanation, and that you'll be given a fine and all those things. I mean, theoretically, the law is the law. But then when it comes to the practical aspect, the prosecutors are not making things right.
Rita,
the police have to.
A senior lawyer, Isaac Kankam, tells me, he sends a message. He says that, look at it this way. I have seen two situations where an investigator tells my clients to plead guilty and the judge will forgive him. He does so and is convicted. In one, a young person was sentenced to 20 years for robbery. Is this widespread?
Yeah, it is. It is.
The police that arrested you and accuse you of wrong because you have been accused before them, that's why they arrest you. They are leading you to the court. And they say when you go, you are better off pleading guilty.
It is. It's widespread.
And you plead even when you are not guilty.
Oh, yes.
There's a guy who was convicted of defilement. He tells me that is what the police told him to do.
Yes, it is widespread. And I tell you, for most of the appeal cases that have come to us at the commission, these were the circumstances. The police will tell you to plead guilty for whatever reason, I do not know, but it is real. It's happening. They will tell you when you go plead guilty, lie to you, the court is going to let you go or something. And then, not knowing and out of fear, they go and then I had to challenge one at the circuit court not long ago because when the case came to me, the accused had already pleaded guilty. When I had conference with him, this was what he said. So I went back and I challenged it. And then the court agreed with me. Yes, okay. And then we started de novo, and he pleaded not guilty. So it's true, it's really happening. And I don't know, sometimes I wonder, I don't know why the police do that, but it's happening.
I've dealt with one such case. It was a road traffic offense. And the guy was told, look, you're better just plead guilty. The fine is just small amount, and then you pay it, and then you move away. And the judge will not even give you so much. But if you go and you say you're not guilty and you're going to delay all of us, the judge will put you into prison. And this guy went and pleaded guilty, and he was convicted on his plea. But we had to come in later and get a thing reversed. My question is, some of them, the intervention is timely. As you found with some of the inmates, a good number of those convicted, the timelines for their appeals have long elapsed. 7 years gone, 20 years gone. What will be their fate?
Well, and because they are criminal cases, sometimes the judges are very relaxed and lenient with the rules. So if you apply for an extension of time to appeal, in most cases, it will be allowed. You'll be given time to file an appeal. That's
especially when the person didn't have representation when the case was going on.
Once you mention that, most likely you'll be allowed. The appeal will be allowed.
Kuku, I bet you'll advise that people avoid the situation where they don't have representation, right?
Yes, absolutely. Because you would prevent going to courts, going to prison, and having to deal with all these issues. So once you find yourself in any issue, any problem, you've committed a mistake, you have to talk to people. You have to understand or know where to go to, because we have the legal aid. People really, as Ghanaians, we don't really believe in systems working. So we don't even trust that when we go to legal aid, we will get a free service and all. But I believe it is
good representation, not just free.
Yes, for the
they don't believe in what
representation.
We do.
Yes, so I believe if the public knows what they are supposed to do when they are faced with such issues, they will be able to get the representation they need.
It is not always a time that people don't know. There's a gentleman who shows up on our Facebook page on the back of this, the flyer for today's program, and says, this is so because the lawyers have themselves so expensive to afford. He says, I quite remember earlier this year, I had to pay only consultation fee of 2,000 Ghana cedis just to permit me to see a human rights lawyer. So it's the money.
Yeah, the money
is part of it.
It's part of it. But when you have an issue, okay, my advice is that you should have a lawyer friend. You see, sometimes you be there and someone will call you that have this issue, and then you advise the person. But most of them don't have access to lawyers. I mean, sometimes when you get the case or when you are in conflict with the law, call a lawyer, because after the lawyer has rescued you, it's then that probably money issues will be discussed. You understand? But most of them will not even bother because they have that presumption, they have that they have that mind that, oh, going for a lawyer is expensive. But going for a lawyer will save you from going to prison. Legal representation is key. So it's not the cost aspect. Sometimes depending on, most lawyers do it pro bono. Most lawyers will do pro bono, depending on their circumstances. And you have the legal aid as...
So you should be saying some, not most.
Yes.
And I think I agree with Rita.
Yeah, and to add to what he said, you know, most of the cases that come to us are inherited briefs from lawyers in private practice.
Who have abandoned their clients.
Exactly, at some point, because of money, because initially when they are engaged, they're able to pay the initial fee. As the case drags on or goes along, the party is not able to pay, and then they abandoned, because when we went in there, Poco and I were at the side that listened to the remand prisoners. For most of them, they initially engaged lawyers. Right. And for the indictable offenses, most of the cases we heard were about murder and all of that. And they are still at the committal stage because, they initially engaged lawyers who were supposed to go with them to the district court for committal. Somewhere along the line, they abandoned them, and then they are still there at the district court, waiting for committal to be done before their fate is decided. So it's really, the money is important, to the lawyers, but like we have been talking the whole week as part of our law week. If the lawyers can, it's more like a calling. That's what I always say. Femi and I were discussing before we came here. Doing this kind of pro bono thing is more of a calling. So if the Accra Bar members can, sometimes overlook the issue of the money and then come in to help, I'm sure the inmates will be very helpful. They'll be grateful. Yeah. Right.
So, Femi, yes, you wanted to say something before I ask my question.
I wanted to say that for lawyers, I don't think the only reason why people become lawyers is to make money. I think most of the time is to make a difference, whether in any matter that is before you. I think that is important that as lawyers, we commit certain hours to pro bono work, because the society doesn't operate in a vacuum or only for paying clients. There are also those who can't afford. There are also those who don't have a lawyer friend. Yeah. There are also those who are intimidated by the whole process. So if, as a community of lawyers, we decide that whether the firms or individuals or before you're called to the bar, you're required to complete a certain number of pro bono hours, I think it will change the narrative around how the marginalized see the legal process or even hiring lawyers. So if everybody commits, whether it's 20 hours to pro bono work, would be able to get through to some of these issues. And I think it's something that I'm a strong advocate for it before people are called to the bar to actually do pro bono work as a requirement to be called to the bar.
After your presentation at the opening last week, we had to commit to a pledge.
Yes.
We had to make a pledge. And the pledge was that every lawyer was committing themselves, their firms, to doing some pro bono work.
Great.
At least, monthly, weekly, quarterly, or yearly, you must do something. But there is that other perspective that you brought on board about making, giving people access to the law, the poor people access to the law, without having to make it, in-person process, rather using technology.
Yes. If you have to, for example, even the trip to Nsawam is a journey, At FGI, we do it at least once a week at the minimum. But there'll be somebody sitting outside who is willing to provide that help. So with a FaceTime call, you're able to do a lot more legal clinics than having to bust everybody there. So we have to start looking at more efficient ways that will actually increase the net of the people that we're able to reach.
Who should be leading this?
I think both civil society, I think the Bar Association, I think individuals, lawyers, groups, such as FJI, POS, and all the ones who are working in that.
Prisons Authorities, Legal Aid Commission.
Legal Aid Commission. I actually started my career at Legal Aid Commission.
Oh, I see.
Yes, that's why I started at Legal Aid Commission before FJI. And to Rita's credit, they do an amazing job with limited resources,
very
limited resources. And I think those are some of the issues that also have to be addressed. Like, how do we, as a community of lawyers, fund legal aid? I think they do get some help from government, but it's important that, for example, something as simple as, you know, the firms committing a percentage of their earnings to support legal aid, or whether in our bar fees we agree that we'll increase it just a little bit so that we can give some to legal aid, and that's what keeps the...
Say something directly to Isabel Boating, the president of the Ghana Bar Association Accra branch, because this is, you know, their initiative.
Yes.
So say something to that executive.
I think
what can they do? Let him finish. Let her finish. Okay. What can they do?
I think what they can do, I think first of all, it's great that, you know, they've actually assembled the prisons committee of the Greater Accra.
How far should they push it the way you were going?
I think we need to push it to accountability, because based on the pledge, we want to make sure that people actually do commit to that 20 hours. So we have to develop a system where we're able to track how many law firms are actually committing to the 20 hours, so that it just doesn't become words, but it actually becomes action. Secondly, I think we should advocate for new lawyers before they are called to the bar to commit to a certain minimum hours of pro bono work. Thirdly, I believe that we should partner with law faculties to be able to have legal defense clinics, that students also work on the cases, and that would also help people like Rita, Legal Aid Commission, myself, in being able to provide this service for more people than we currently can.
So Rita, now back to you. You often, before they get to you, those who cannot afford, like the gentleman who spoke about the 2,000 cedi consultation fee, they would have already gone through the process, at least at the police level.
Yeah.
The police would have read their Miranda right to them, that you don't say anything, because anything you say could be used against you, you know, at the trial. They don't have the money to hire the lawyer at that point. They would have already gone, spoken, committed themselves, self-incriminated themselves, before eventually they come looking around and get to Legal Aid Commission. How speedy are your interventions when the poor call on you?
It is. But before I get into that, I think I wanted to say, and it's worth mentioning, that the GBA already gives us something. That's the national GBA, not Greater Accra. So every year they commit some of the dues. I'm very much aware that it's been coming consistently. Yes. Now, back to your question. When the case comes, as soon as it comes to us, we are reacting quickly. But I tell you, by the time it's coming to us, the people are already in court. In the middle of trial, maybe their plea have been taken, or committal has already been completed before it is coming to us. So I know that there was an initiative, you know, to put some of our staff, national service personnel, or some paralegals at the police stations, so that as soon as people are arrested and brought to the police stations, they inform us, they inform the office quickly, and then lawyers are sent there. But it goes back to what we have been saying. We are understaffed. We do imagine the number of police stations in Accra, and they are arresting every day. It's impossible to have, you know, all our national service persons or even interns from the law school to be positioned in all these police stations. But the moment the case comes to us, we are up and running.
Okay, this is their legal right, constitutional right, to have a lawyer even if they can't afford. So how can the state make an excuse for their inability to afford and the fact that the Legal Aid, you know, Commission is not staffed properly?
Okay. I believe the state is not supposed to make an excuse, but what the state can do in its limited resources is to engage, have ways of engaging private legal practitioners. As Femi has said, these are some of the proposals that can work to help some of these people, but also engage lawyers, because the students would have a fair idea of what the substantive law is, but procedures are is the lawyer called to the bar who knows the procedures and knows how to go about some of these cases. So it is more of appealing and also engaging lawyers to commit to these pro bono services. It is something I believe that the state should endeavor to do when if they really want to actually help these inmates or help the criminal justice system.
Yeah. Yes. Yes, Frank.
If I can chip in, we can go the UK system where law firms are linked to a certain number of police stations, so doing pro bono. So where there is a case or someone is in conflict with the law, is a police station officer who will call the law firm, irrespective of that.
A law firm closest to that police station. That is if that law firm does pro bono services.
Pro bono, yes. And I mean, it should be, the government should, you know, there should be a memorandum of understanding between some of these law firms to handle some of the, or in consultation with the legal aid, so that the nearest law, those law firms within some perimeter within the police station will be called. And then, I mean, they will attend to, even in the night.
I can imagine these firms will be inundated.
And
they must have money to be able to do that.
These are budgeted for. You know, the government gives budget to some of these legal aid to disperse to those, depending on the cases that you handle for that particular period.
Okay.
It's not any big money, but at least if those can satisfy their transportation in and out, and then, I mean, for the initial stage, before the accused can get can acquire his own lawyer to take the case. These are the basic
Femi, do you see how civil society can contribute to this? Talking to you from Fair Justice Initiative, when you are moving, anytime you move, that's money. So you need civil society, you need the whole community to help you.
Yes, I believe that civil society can push for policy reforms, right? I think that's one critical area that civil society can contribute through policy reforms on some of these issues. If civil society gives us the platform and also to educate the public, I believe that the media also has a huge role to play in changing the narrative and shifting the narrative around incarceration and welcoming formerly incarcerated people to humanize it. I keep stressing on humanizing it, because if we don't humanize it, we end up making people continue that narrative of you've been incarcerated, you need to stay away from them, and we're not going to be able to assimilate them back into society. I think the media has to talk about this not just as statistics, but as somebody's mother, somebody's child, somebody's, they're dreamers as well. They also have hopes and stuff. Yeah. Once you start to humanize it, people will now start to look at it very differently.
I spoke to this driver who finds himself within the four walls of the prison, and he was talking about his wife and children. Wife and children, that was all on his mind. But he appeared to admit that he did wrong, and the law caught up with him. So how does he go about it? Rita, you guys have done a great job as the GVA Pro Bono, Prisons Project. You spoke to and assessed in excess of 200 inmates. That should be the beginning of the work. What's going to happen? What should happen?
We went in with 100 forms, printed forms. And then when we got there, when we saw the numbers, we were amazed. So quickly, I had to let them run extra copies. And before I know, we had done,
finished.
Yeah, we had done over 200. Yes, so the plan for us as the committee is to now sit back. We have all the details. We listened to them, as in we had conference with them, both remand prisoners and convicted ones. We are now going to sit down, look at these forms, form by form, case on its merits, each case on its merits, and then draw a plan as to how we're going to go about it. Of course, I don't think it will be all. We need to, for those convicted ones, we have to decide which ones we think we can succeed on appeal to be able to proceed on that tangent. But for the remand prisoners, I think we're going to take up all of it. So far we have quite a number of the volunteered lawyers who have joined.
Right.
Yes. So at least I think if each of us takes 1 or 2, I'm sure it will be good to go. So I'm thinking that each of us should do that. So we're going to sit down as a committee, as a group, and assess all these cases, and then take it from there.
Right.
Yeah.
The often, Femi, the media coverage for such visits, which organizations like yours embark on, do highlight the prison visits positively. They tell us the problems and say there is the need for help. How can such visibility be used to build empathy and reshape public attitudes towards formerly incarcerated persons?
I believe that visibility is a very powerful tool, very, very powerful tool. And I believe that, yes, the media has to move from just empathy to systematic empathy, right? Which is letting people be able to relate to the inmates. For example, in the footage that we showing the woman being released from prison, her family meeting her, it now moves from it being 15, a woman who has served 15 years has been released, to you recognizing some part of connection, making connection with the person. So I think the visibility is very important. Also walking into the prison with dignity and respect, you know. When we do these legal aid clinics, the legal clinics, giving them their time, even the mere fact that you're able to sit in front of them, ask them questions, showing concern, dignifies them, and for them shows them respect.
We have had high public office holders, politicians, they go in there, then immediately they come out, they say, is that how bad the place is? We will have to do something and change. But it fizzles out very shortly.
Short memory.
Yeah, sadly so. But I think that, you know, there are also people who do this, you know, as their God calling. I was speaking to Rita about it, Frank and Pokia, that are determined to advocate for the changes. I also believe that we can't miss the fact that prevention is better than cure, which is to have a very intentional approach to educating the marginalized about the legal processes, even before they get to Rita's desk, right? Which is finding different ways, especially now with the expansion of social media, how whether we're running ads or running conversations on either of the platforms about, or shooting commercials about educating the marginalized about the process. I think that would also give them the confidence that should you be arrested, you're able to say that I need.
In 30 seconds, your very concluding comments, Frank.
Yeah, what I would say is that one, there should be legal education should be on a massive scale. I mean, the media should carry out media education in respect of what's happening in the prison to throw more light so that the constitutional rights of individuals or accused in the prison should not be infringed.
Okay.
So that's my, and then get a lawyer if you are in conflict with them.
At all times, try at all costs. Yes, Pokua.
So I would also advocate for our inmates, those who are also on remand, that the system should work for our people. We should be able to work for people who do not have and those who have.
Thank you. Rita.
Yes, I will call on the Greater Accra Bar and then the other regional bars. Please join the course. You know, for the Greater Accra Bar, we have done the work for you. We went in, we got the cases, and we've brought it. So join us as we assess these cases and take it up to help them.
Thank you. Femi.
I would put a charge on society that if you believe in second chances, then prove it by how you receive formerly incarcerated persons.
Thank you all very much, ladies and gentlemen. And I looked at one prisoner in the face and I could tell he was looking for hope from me. And I said, I'm sorry, in your circumstances, you cannot be helped. You must serve your sentence, your punishment for the wrong that you did. And he said, can I serve it with a bit of dignity?
Yeah.
This has been The Law. It's your legal light. It is your help law. And my guests have been Rita Kunkutia-Lee, who is public defender with the Legal Aid Commission. Pokua Apia-Kusi is with AEK. Kujo and Associate. Frank Baini Donko is with Savers Law and Consultancy. And Femi Asante, Mrs. is CEO of Group Sebastian. She is with Templates law firm and also the founder and lead for Fair Justice Initiative. I'm Samson Ladia-Yanini. This has been The Law. It's your legal light. It is your help law. Have a good afternoon.